Hey everyone, welcome back to KC3D Sparks. Today we are going to take another small break from our dungeon so we can do another monster, which I thought would be fun, is an Aboleth. So this picture is actually the one that is in the actual 5e monster manual. So I know there's quite a few different variations of how Aboleths can look, but I thought it might be nice to just grab the one that was actually in the monster manual, so that way we can all follow along if you guys have that as a reference. But if not, you can always just pull this image off of the internet as well. But basically, I just went ahead and opened up Blender. I got rid of the default cube, and if you have your menu open, you can just hit N. If it's not, go down here, check your background images box and hit add image, and you can pull that in. You'll just navigate to wherever your file is and pull that in. Perfect. So with your defaults, you can of course change the opacity and all that fun stuff. I'm actually, because this isn't a perfect like front on headshot and then we have a right angle and all that, I'm actually just going to use this as a reference. So I'm just going to push this off to the side so I can look at it when I need to. Now, other than that, for getting my scene set up, I went over to my scene tab and I will be working in inches. Of course, work with whatever you're most comfortable in. And for the scale of my grid floor, I have that set to 1/4 of an inch as well. So now we have that all set up. I actually want to go ahead and do Shift A, mesh, and we're going to start with a sphere. Now, you'll notice that the points are at the top and bottom. What I want to do is go ahead and we're going to align this to view. And I set my segments to 12 and the rings to 8. Now your default's probably going to be at 32 and 16. Go ahead and change those to 12 and 8. And for the size, we're just going to go ahead and let's just start with 1 inch for now, and we can size up from there. Now, in the monster manual, it does say that this is a very large creature, so it's probably going to be a few inches. I'm not going to be doing anything precise. I'm going to worry about the modeling, and we can worry about the complete size after the fact. So 2 inches is probably plenty for now to work with, and we can resize it after. Okay, so now that we have our circle, I'm going to go ahead and just tab into edit mode. Scroll in a little bit. I'm going to hit Z for wireframe view, A to deselect everything, B for border select, and grab this left half. But I also want to go ahead and grab this center vertice as well. We're just going to do X and delete all of them. So we have this half and then this new circle created as well. So that's hollow for us. Now we'll go ahead and add modifier. We're going to do a mirror modifier. I'm going to go ahead and check clipping so that way these get stuck. And we're also going to go ahead and do a subdivision surface modifier, and I like to crank that up to 3. And if you want, you could always do shading smooth if you wanted the look, or you could leave it flat, which I think for now I'm just going to leave it flat. Because it's more of how it would actually print out. Smooth is nicer for when you're going to render it. Okay, so now that we have this basic piece set up, what I want to do is basically use this sphere for the beginning of his head. So the reason I made that hole was so that way his mouth was actually created from that, and then we didn't need the back. We're going to end up extruding tentacles. So that's why I was like, we'll go ahead and just delete the back vertice as well, because we probably won't need it and we can always add it back if we do. First things first, getting kind of accustomed to what we want to use where. So we know that this ring is going to be used for his mouth, and then since he has 3 eyes stacked on top of each other, we're actually going to be using these 3 points as our references for that as well. So what I want to do, I'm going to go into sign view, go ahead and grab this, and I want my mouse to be on the left side, do V to rip, and we're going to pull that down. And that will start creating that eye slit for us. Now the reason we had our mouse in the left side specifically, because if you notice, if you have it on the right side, it'll pull to the right. So it'll still work. We just have a little bit more work to do. You'll notice it kind of opens more on top. This one's already almost positioned to where we need it. So if I go ahead, undo that, do V with my mouse on the left, it creates that eye slit again. Now, it also kind of works out because if you'll notice in the picture, the lower eye is a bit smaller, and then this one gets a little bit bigger, and then this one's even a little bit bigger. So since our vertices are set up as is, it actually kind of works out, and we don't have to worry about sizing as much. So we can go ahead, do V, and pull this one down as well. And we'll probably go ahead and pull this up, and start making this a little less spherical on the back. Okay, so now we have some of our basic stuff set up. I'm gonna tab out of edit mode. We're gonna do Shift A, mesh, and add another sphere. I'm just gonna go ahead and hit 1 so we can align that to view. And I'm gonna go ahead and up this back to 30 and this to about 16. Oops, not 160, 16. And you'll notice his eyes are a little bit more oblong. They don't seem like they're perfectly spherical. So I am going to size that along the X to kind of work that out a little bit. Now I could be mistaken, but that's how it appears to me. I'm gonna hit Z for wireframe view so I can start lining this eyeball up. And that's probably a good size, maybe a little larger. And this will help us set up the eyelid. So we'll go ahead and do Shift D and go ahead and line up our next one. So I probably want that one about here. And I want that to be larger. So I'm just gonna go ahead and increase that. I'm not gonna do too much. Shift D, get our other one set up probably just like that. Definitely want that higher to be more like that. And then size that up. Maybe lower that one. Okay, cool. So now we have those set up. If you want, you can actually, we'll go ahead and rename this to I1, I2, just so we can keep our outliner a little bit more organized. I3, and then this one to Aboleth. Okay. Now, if you want to lock these into place so you can't accidentally move them around, you can actually go over here and select these mouse pointers, and that will actually make it so you cannot click on them. They're locked into place. So you can certainly gray them out if you want to, which I might for now, just to make sure I don't accidentally do anything to them, but that's personal preference. So now that we have those set up, we'll just go ahead, right click on our Aboleth and tab back into edit mode so we can get these vertices set back up. So go ahead, we're gonna pull this way up. And you'll notice it starts to come back here, so we'll want to pull the back up a little as well. And we can always pull this up. So this is a good part of our push and pull. Go ahead and pull that up. And I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna do Control R, and it's not gonna come all the way through because they're already split up. So we're gonna have to add loops here. So we're just doing Control R, and I'm gonna go ahead and do it to the back as well. So I'm just left clicking and then right clicking so that way it stays right in the center. And if you want, you could always make it even so that way we have our other loop on the other side as well to keep it consistent. And then of course you'll notice that there are some adjustments now. So we'll go ahead and drag these down. Now, the reason I wanted to go ahead and add that is you'll notice in the picture, we have pretty dramatic eye slits that start occurring here. So we're gonna probably go ahead and start adding them in. So I'm gonna grab this vertex to start. We're gonna do E to extrude and pull that over. So that way it kind of lines up in the middle of these two. I'm gonna do that up here again as well. So E to extrude, pull it so it's almost in the middle. E to extrude, and right about there. Now, you might have wondered, oh, you should just grab all three and then pull all three at the same time. If you do that, you'll notice that these edges also get highlighted. So if you do E to extrude, it's gonna add faces as well, so it's not gonna work properly. You'll want to do each vertice individually, so that way they don't connect. Or you could do these two at the same time and then this one separately. But now that we have that set up, we'll go ahead and we're going to do F for face, F for face after selecting that. And I'm going to grab this edge here, do Shift E to sharpen that so we can start getting that nice eyelid crease. But I do need to pull this back, and maybe this a little more forward. Oh, except I sharpened the wrong edge. Let's undo that and try that again. There we go. That's a little bit better. Grab these three, hit F for face, grab these three, F for face, Shift E to sharpen that, push this back a little bit, pull that forward, F for face, 1, 2, 3, F for face, Shift E, push this back, to start getting that a little bit closer. Now I do have these big holes here, so we're going to go ahead, grab these three and push them in so we can start getting that closer. So I'll bring that one in first, push that one in, just so it starts to intersecting. All right, that's close enough for now. What we'll probably end up doing is extruding them out. I'm just getting them as close as possible first. Pull that down, not too much. And when you're going through, just make sure nothing of the sphere is popping out, or else that will show up later, and you definitely don't want that to happen. So that is a good start. Now, to finish off and make sure nothing is showing, what I want to do is just do Alt right click so it grabs this circle here. We're going to do E to extrude and just size that in. And then what I can do, pull that up, pull this back out a little bit, and adjust. So that way we start getting something that looks more like an actual eyelid. I'm going to do the same thing up here, E to extrude, and just size that in, pull that up. Let me pull this back out. Alt right click, whoops, Alt right click, E to extrude, size that in, pull that up. Awesome. So this eye might be a little bit larger than I actually wanted, but still good for now. And it probably looks a little funny, but it's great. I love it. All right. Okay, so what I want to actually do is we don't need this ring. I'm going to go ahead and actually delete that. And I'm going to grab this ring, Alt right click, and we're going to size that out. Same with this one. I'm going to size this out. So that way it's more of just a sphere on the front, and it actually starts just kind of floating back out. Size this. Here we go. Cool. Now, obviously his mouth is going to be larger than this. This is something that I want to go ahead and adjust now. So I'm going to do just size this out. You'll notice it's getting a little wonky because we have these two in here. So just make sure you kind of like adjust those as you go as well. Just small minor adjustments as we're going. All right, so now we can start working on the actual mouth. So for the mouth, now we size it up a little bit. You'll notice his skin kind of just ends here. His gums pop out and then there's a billion teeth. So what we'll want to do is kind of get it set up. So I don't want to have to rig too much of this. It's gonna probably be modeled as is, and then most of the rig will be set up to be more about the tentacles and then just the position of the head itself, and then maybe these tentacles as well. So what we want to do is, again, we can size this up this way a little bit, do some minor adjustments. It doesn't have to be perfectly circular, since you'll notice it definitely is not perfect either. It's, you know, it's an organic crazy monster and it's going to be printed anyway. So don't worry about this being absolutely perfect because it does not have to be. So I'm going to size this out a little bit more. Probably more, yeah, like that. And then I do want to make it so it's a little bit more dramatic on the bottom. So I'm going to drag this down, pull this out. Just make sure you get the basic shape that you're going for first before you start adding any details, because then you just have way more geometry to move and it'll be more of a pain later on. Get your basic shapes done first. That's always very important. Okay. So I think I'm happy with this. I'm actually going to push it back a little bit. We're going to do E to extrude and just size that down. And I'm going to make this so it's kind of like that skin flap. I'm trying to do Control R, and we'll push this here and just pull that out along the Y to give us more of a ridge there. And then I'm going to grab this again, do E to extrude, and we're just going to pull that out along the Y axis and size that down to about there. And then I'm going to push it along the X a little bit extra, like that. Now, his seems to come out a little bit more, so I'm going to go into side view, pull it out a little bit extra, and then actually push it down more because it seems to come down more along the top. So just like that. I'm going to do E to extrude again, just size that in. E to extrude, and I'm going to pull that back. It's actually starting to look good. We'll do E to extrude again, pull that back even more, size that down. I'm going to actually pull those up. E to extrude, size that in. Size that all the way down, and we're going to do Alt M at center, and you'll notice it does connect, so that's only one vertex now, but we could get this strange like rippling. So to fix that, we can just add another loop so that way it doesn't do that. So I'm going to do Control R and just size that in a little bit closer so that way it smooths that out for us. Perfect. But we just need kind of like a dimple because we're obviously not going to make him hollow or do any of his stomachs or anything. So we're just going to do it that way to seal that off, and then you can start working on his teeth. But before I worry about teeth or anything, I'm going to go back and do some more details to his face. So we just start with this generic shape first. Okay, so going back up to his eye. I don't want this ridge as high, so more smoothing this out first. And his eyelids still kind of bother me. I still want these to be a little bit more dramatic. I want to make sure that they're big enough that they show up. Pull that out and this up. And then you can also sharpen this to help carry that into there to make that even more clear. So if we grab these two, do Shift E, you'll notice the difference there. Shift E to get that nice crease that we're after. And if you want, you could even grab these to make them a little bit larger. And then I'm just smoothing it out. If you want, you could sharpen this a little bit to create more of a distinction in between his gum line and his skin, but that's up to you. But I just sharpened it slightly. It's like just a little bit more bold. It's not even pink. Okay, but he does have kind of a fin on the top. So if we look at the picture, he has a fin almost here, kind of tentacle, but it does have that flat skin flap there. And then the others around his face are tentacles. There's no skin flap or anything that I can tell. There kind of is one in the back, but it's very subtle. This one's the most distinct. So if we want to get his first kind of like fin, oops, let's go ahead and focus in on this. What I'm going to do, I'm going to switch to face select and just grab these two here, do E to extrude and size them down. Push it back because it is a little bit away from the eye. Push this back up so that way it's a little bit more level again. And then switch back to vertex select mode. It is pretty thin, so I'm going to draw these back up. And he has more of a distinction on the front, so it does come out and then it kind of flows back into his skin too, so we can make it a little bit more bulbous here and then extrude that up. So what I'm gonna do from here, do E to extrude, oops, grab all of them, hit E to extrude, size that up, grab this, size that in, size these in. I'm just going to go into top view to make it a little bit easier. I'm going to pull this in more dramatically. E to extrude. Pull this up. I'm actually going to add a loop here, so I can make that like that. Pinch that in. Size that down. E to extrude. Grab that with G. I'm gonna rotate it again. Size it down. Now it did size down a lot more along the Y and Z, so that's another thing to pay attention to, because whenever you have a mirror modifier, it sometimes doesn't size as well along the X. So I'm just gonna go back, C for wireframe view, and push them back in along the X to smooth that out a little bit. Now, obviously, I want this to be a little thicker than normal because of the 3D printing aspect. You want to make sure to actually be able to be thick enough to print out. So that's the only other thing to think about. But that's not too bad. It's a little bit more wiggly and that kind of thing. I made this pretty smooth and almost more of an antenna. So that's something that you can go back and adjust. And if you want, of course, you can rig it if you wanted it to be way more precise and controlled. But if you just want to model it, then have fun messing around with the way you can just do Control R, add in different loops, that kind of thing, to add in different elements to the tentacles, and of course do those to his face as well. So I'm just going to grab this one here, do E to extrude. I'm actually going to size that down a lot. E to extrude. I'm actually going to sharpen this one almost all the way. Actually all the way. I just did SX0 to size that down. I'm going to do E to extrude again. I'm going to grab that, rotate it. Be a little bit more like that. I might go ahead and make the base a little bit bigger. I'll make sure again that it's large enough to print, and then probably just do another one here. E to extrude, size that down, E to extrude. Rotating and sizing, and then I do a smaller one just so it gives more geometry at the edge as well. Cool. So obviously you guys can have fun with adding different tentacles and things like that to his face, so that way you get some different variations. And if you want it, because they're not all precise too, you could even go back in once you apply your mirror modifier and add them individually, because you'll see like there's 3 right here and then there's 1 there. They're a little bit more randomized than what I'm currently doing. So I'm probably going to stop with just these 4 and then go back later once everything else is done and add in some variations to those tentacles. So that's probably all I'll add for now. Now, the other thing is he does have these sharp, almost, these are probably like gills is what I'm assuming these are. So I do want to add those in real quick. So basically we'll set those up along here. So what I'm going to do is do Control R. We're going to use this one. Control R. I'm going to set up, we'll just do Control R. Size that along there. So we get these 3. So I'm going to add another one in between them as well. Grab the ones that we added in the center. Oops. 1, 2, 3. And we're just going to grab the y-axis and pull that back. And I'm going to do Shift E. Now the other thing is probably go ahead and grab the ones that were the outer rings. and size them out and pull them along the x-axis a little bit to kind of open it up a little bit. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, I don't. To add in those gills, what we want to do is we can just use the lines that are already here. So I'm going to use this one as a template and this loop as a template, and probably add in another one right here. So that way we can just do 3. And of course we can go ahead and, you know, do different variations of them. They weren't sized perfectly. Actually, that might be a little close to his mouth if we use this one. So we might just maybe do 2. And then use that as the front. So what we'll do, I'm gonna add a loop here, size that towards this one. We'll go ahead and do Control R, size that towards this one, and Control R and size that towards this back one. So what I want to do, I'm going to switch to face select, grab these 6 faces. I'm going to do E to extrude, and we're going to pull them back along the X or the Y, and then push them in towards the X. And then before we size them, I want to go down here to our pivot point and do individual origins, so that way they don't size towards anything else, and we can size them down. I'm going to do S and X like that, so we get our gills kind of. Now the other thing is they're kind of rounded, which of course you can leave as is if you're interested, or you could do Shift E and try to sharpen up some of them, which I'm gonna do towards the ones that before we deselect, but I'm not sure if there's any other spots that should be sharpened. Might go ahead, sharpen these edges just a little bit. To try and help with that, so we get those nice gill lines for us, or for our aboleth. Okay, so those are some good basics. The last thing I want to go over today for this part of our aboleth is probably the teeth. Now, there's a few different ways that you could go about doing teeth. You could add in a bunch of geometry, start doing, like, let's do a couple loops in here. Actually, let's do Control R, scroll up, maybe 2 times for our loops. And you could grab different faces and start extruding them to get different teeth, pull them up. But I think that's going to be way too much work, and I don't think it'll be worth your time and effort. It could be if it's going to be something that you're going to be animating rather than 3D printing, because then your geometry is going to be a lot cleaner and nicer. But since we're just printing it, we're probably just going to add a bunch of teeth and boolean it, which isn't the best practice, of course, like I said, for animating, but for 3D printing, I like to cut corners a little bit. So what I'm going to do is do Shift A, and for the shape of our teeth, actually, let's look at them real quick before we decide. They're pretty round at the top that come to a nice point, so I'll probably just end up doing a cube actually and adding in a couple different loops to shape it out like this. So if we do Shift A, mesh and cube, I'm gonna pull this over here, size that down so you guys can see what I'm thinking for the teeth. So I'm just gonna start with one of the like medium-sized ones. I'm just gonna tab into edit mode, do Control R, pull this down, Control R, S and X, like that. Grab everything, go into side view, do S and Y. See, more like that. Size those in together to be our generic tooth shape. And then we can go ahead, duplicate this. So what I'm going to do is name this to tooth. So that way they'll all have that basic one. So I'm going to do, just go ahead and size that down so it's a little smaller. Do Shift D. So for our main ones, what I'm going to do is just do S and Z and do about that size for our main frontal teeth. Grab this again, do Shift D. And for our smaller ones, you can either just widen them out and then size them down so that way they're a little bit chunkier. But honestly, there aren't too many variations of his teeth. It really just, once you get into these ones, look like they're a little less defined. So what we could do is do Shift A, mesh, and do another cube. Size that down. I'm just going to tab in edit mode, do Control R, pull that down, and probably just do about that for our other tooth. Maybe do S and X to add a little bit of dimension to it. But I'm not going to do anything crazy. So those are our basic shapes. So now what we can do, I'm just going to select all of them, pull them over here. And now obviously they're all too big, so I'm going to size them down. I'm going to grab this one. Now they flare out. That's why I kind of wanted to get our shapes first, because we're going to start doing some crazy rotations to them. So that was always nice to get your basic shapes first, and then you can go in, do the rotations and all that fun stuff. Now, the other thing is these are super kind of harsh, sharp, and geometric still, because we don't have much geometry to them at all. So you might want to go back in, do a subdivision surface. I'm probably going to do just one. You could do 2 or 3. Actually, 2 looks pretty nice, but it's not as sharp. So I'm probably going to stick to 1, and I can always increase it later. And I'm going to size that back up. So I want these to be pretty large. So Shift D, pull these up. Now his mouth is flooded with teeth, so don't be too shy with these. So I'm just going to go ahead, speed through this and add in teeth so you guys can see what my somewhat results will be, and then we'll go from there. All right, so this is a good start of what I want the end result to be. So, I mean, obviously, I just went in, did the basic circle, and then started duplicating like crazies and doing different variations, just sizing some up to fill in gaps, that kind of thing. This could be something that you could just do for hours, honestly. So, up to you guys of how detailed you want to get with the teeth. If you just keep referencing back to the picture, you can kind of see like, okay, well, not a bad start for what we have here. Obviously, we can go into way more detail. Up to you guys of how much detail you want to do. It depends on how much, of course, your printer can handle anyway. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the first part of this tutorial. Next week, we'll focus on getting the tentacles and getting the tentacles set up with some of the fins and other variations he has on it. So other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to let me know what you thought of this video in the comments below. Any recommendations or helpful critiques are very welcome. And other than that, I will see you guys next week. If you want quick help though, feel free to join my Discord. That's also in the description below. And don't forget to like and subscribe this video, and I'll see you next time.